Hello and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones, and let's get started.
Hey, folks. Thanks for jumping in today. Good to see you back here on Piano Tech Radio Hour. We just getting comfortable here. We usually do this for a few minutes up front, make sure people got a minute to jump in. If you're out there on the socials, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those different places, and you're catching us right now, consider jumping into the actual Zoom call. And you can find us through the links that we'll put in the chats there. Emerson, if you're able, I think the Instagram, we might need to just go to the actual stream, maybe even Twitter, and put the links in there. I don't know. Check and see if it goes out with our platform or not. But yeah, we'll try to get you guys links so you can come into the Zoom call, or if you're out on socials, you just want to stay there, that's okay too. We're going to have a wonderful guest today and talk some more pianos and music, and I'll get into introducing where we're at and what we're doing. So I will officially welcome you to Piano Tech Radio Hour, and this is a place where we meet each Saturday to meet with and learn from some of the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This could include manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs are often here. Our mutual goal is to become better at our crafts, to learn and help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. This show, Piano Tech Radio Hour, is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour. Please do. It's just $16 a month, and for that, you get direct access to these Zoom calls each week. It's a private call that only you and selected participants can attend, as well as getting the archival recordings of these sessions in our member area. There's over 200 sessions at this point. We've been at this for several years. You can join Piano Tech Radio Hour at the link bit.ly/joinptrh. And beyond that, I'd like to make just a couple of announcements. Just want to remind you to check out our podcast, pianotechradio.com. These newer episodes come out about a month from our initial recording date, and also we're releasing archival episodes from about 2 years ago. And we took a little bit of a pause in production and release of the podcast, but we're back up and running. We've had some really cool episodes come out recently. Right now you can catch, since Friday's episode is our episode with Noah Ferrer, the piano tuner astronomer astrologist, which is a fascinating session. And you can also check out our blog at substack.pianotechniciansmasterclass or pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. You can have access there to really wonderful in-depth articles on specific little pieces of our members-only lecture content. And so you get some illustrations, some instructions on something cool. Maybe it's voicing, maybe it's regulation. Check out the blog post if you like what you see. There's usually a link that you can join and get our more deeper masterclass content. And then last but not least, I want to mention our upcoming convention, June 20th. Go to bit.ly/PTMC24 and register today. The prices are much more accessible the earlier you register. We're going to have a great full day of content. We're going to be talking with Glenn Bingham, formerly from Steinway. We're going to be talking with Jim Wilson, who just released his memoir and has worked with some of the masters, not only in our industry in terms of the technicians that he's learned from, but also the masters of musicianship, Paul McCartney, Elton John, Korea, all these wonderful folks. He's going to share some wisdom. And then we'll talk to Mark Sarazano, who has a more scientific and an engineering approach to learning piano tuning and technology. And then there'll also be some surprise content. So make sure you sign up now and catch that. All right. Aside from plugging our socials, look us up. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Let's get started with an introduction to our guest today. You've seen him patiently waiting there. His name is Miguel de la Cerna, and I'll get into his bio here in a minute, and then we'll have an interesting conversation with this fine young gentleman. He is a music director and arranger and a prolific performer, an influential educator. He's a Chicago native, right where I'm from as well here. De la Cerna is the third generation in the distinguished lineage of Chicago piano jazz greats. His grandfather, pianist General Morgan, accompanied and recorded with both Billie Holiday and Henry Red Allen, and recording artist Gloria Morgan was De la Cerna's aunt. After studies at the American Conservatory of Music and Oberlin Conservatory, De la Cerna toured the U.S., Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East and Asia for more than a decade as a pianist and conductor for various ensembles and theatrical productions before resettling to his home in Chicago. He tours frequently and has recorded extensively in his role as a music director and arranger. He's also a frequent collaborator with some of the world's most celebrated masters of jazz. He performs classical and world music and has twice been commissioned to compose music for Chicago's innovative contemporary classical quintet, the Orion in Ensemble. Miguel, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And folks will notice your sound is going to be a little bit roomy, but that's because we'll be able to feature some of your piano playing at some point during the session. Look forward to that. Before we get started, of course, we're going to dive into pianos and your relationship to pianos and acoustic piano very early on up here. But first, I want to talk about your upbringing as a musician. How did this all come to pass that you worked your way into a career as a musician, especially, kind of in the context of the Chicago scene there?
Well, as you read off my bio, I come from a family of musicians. But oddly enough, my own parents are not musicians. And so my mom's a lawyer. We talked about being married to her. My mom's a lawyer. My father was a chef. What ultimately happened is, my mom just took me to have piano lessons like any normal neighborhood kid. And it just I just kind of took to it. And, I had a great teacher. His name was James Mundy. Who was kind of like, he was the music director for the Olivet Baptist Church, which is the first African-American Baptist church here in Chicago on 35th and King Drive. And in those days, the gospel scene was mostly spirituals and classical. And so he was a proponent of that, and he took me under his wings. And then I went to a religious grade school, Seventh-day Adventist, from kindergarten to 8th grade. And they had a very strong music presence as well. And it was more, I don't know that I would say there was, I wish there was a point, like I said, I dreamed of being a pianist, really. It was more like, I was in high school and trying to figure it out, what I wanted to do. And it turned out that, right around my sophomore year of high school, in those days, it was the Cold War days, so we had a Russian guy who had immigrated from Russia, and his name was Vladimir Leychkis. Anyway, he did a concert, and I just struck up a conversation with him, and he took me on as his student, and then he prepared me to go to Oberlin at the time when I graduated from high school. I just kind of thought, I think I want to do this. I think I was attracted to the, and by then my Aunt Gloria was a jazz musician too, so I used to kind of hang out with her in the nightclubs and stuff, I was always loved music. It was never anything, but I didn't think I could be a professional musician. I think when you're a kid, you're looking at these people who are doing this thing, and you're just thinking, I could never do that. And I had stage fright too, which took me was a bit of it took a while to overcome. I don't know.
Did you do recitals as a youngster when you were learning music, or was that not part of the sort of? training?
I did my first recital. I played the Fur Elise. I was maybe 7 years old, 7 years old, and I did that. But then, when I was in Seventh Day Adventist school, I did a lot of performance. I won't say recitals. They were more like, they took me around. In those days, I played flute as well and oboe, and so they kind of took me around little music festivals and various religious outings. And really, it wasn't so much recitals. It was more like we were just playing. And they said, Miguel, play that piece. And then I just sat there and played it. I didn't really think about it so much. And it's probably why I'm known now as an accompanist more than ever. Well, as long as I'm playing for someone else, the stage fright doesn't hit me as much as opposed to just playing, by myself, as a solo.
Got it.
That's what happened, really. I had maybe 3 recitals. I remember them all. The Fur Elise was a pretty good one. I also had a Haydn C major sonata. That one went, to me it was a disaster, but it really wasn't. What happened is in the middle, I paused for whatever reason. I mean, I take to remember this. I was maybe 11 years old. I paused in the middle of it and got just like a brain fart, as it were. And then it was like maybe seconds, and I went right back and played the rest of it, relatively well. But what I remember, of course, is the moment of.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. It's funny. You just don't know when you're that young the leniency that you get, and people just think it's cute when you make mistakes. To be honest, right? But it's hilarious looking back on those moments. I just went to a concert over at in downtown Chicago here. What's it called? Symphony Center or something? I forget what they call it. And they had a young composers thing in kind of one of the side stages. And these kids the youngest one was 12 up to the age of maybe like 18 or something like that. And they all they composed some really incredible music. Luckily, they didn't have to perform it. That probably would have been even more nerve-wracking. But they each had to give up and give a speech before their piece played, and it was just so interesting to hear them talk and think, oh man, how nervous they might be, right? And everybody just like, you could say anything. Well, that sounds great in terms of your upbringing. It's kind of a very organic approach to becoming a musician. And I think I mentioned to you before we started, I'd love to make part of what this session is today is like an introduction for folks to Chicago and the Chicago music scene. Because as I've mentioned to you, we've got people all over the world, tuning in. It could be Belgium or Germany or the Philippines or, South Africa. And so, your just sort of organic childhood experiences and musical upbringing can really bring some might be natural things to you, but some sort of fascinating things. So what I want to just mention here is it's connected with your upbringing. You grew up on the south side of Chicago.
I did.
Yeah. And you attended the University of Chicago Lab School, which is really a great institution for high school. Talk about the south side of Chicago and the music scene on the south side of Chicago. Like, what do you think of when you think south side, or as opposed to like north side or west side or whatever? What does that kind of mean?
Okay, we got to put it in the years that I grew up, which was so I was born in '61. So it was a great time for the south side to be on the south side musically. It was. One of my earliest memories, where I grew up on 41st Street which is Bronzeville now, it's called, and there was a theater there called Oakenwall Theater where I saw Batman and Planet of the Apes and all these 1960 movies. But anyway, that movie theater closed down and it became the Afro Arts Theater, and they had Phil Ceran and all these great avant-garde artists there. And Maurice White was there with his group too before the Earth, Wind and Fire. In fact, that's where they started to formulate the Earth, Wind and Fire thing.
Wow.
He was here in Chicago. He was part of the before that he was part of the Ramsey Lewis trio.
Mm-hmm.
Maurice White was, and Cleveland Eaton was the bass player. And I mentioned that because right here on the South Side, I mentioned he went to school with Ramsey Lewis's kids. And I ended up working a lot with L.D. Young and Red Holt, who became Young Holt Unlimited. I don't know if you know some of their hits, and so the South Side at that time, there still was some music there. There was a lot of it was centralized on 63rd Street. Wasn't a whole lot, but there was some there. We had a lot of blues here. We had Teresa's and the Checkerboard Lounge where Buddy Guy and Muddy Waters would perform. So there's a lot to the Chicago scene. I mean, I could wax forever about it because I'm on the board of the Jazz Institute of Chicago, and I'm constantly reminding people that Chicago has a very, very important place in the music scene, especially in terms of just in everything. I mean, right now, house music is one of our big exports right now, and from the 80s. We had the avant-garde with Sun Ra and Mulhall Richard Abrams and Roscoe Mitchell and the Art Ensemble of Chicago. They all did that at Mandel Hall at the University of Chicago. A lot of that was there. The AACM, which is the Advancement of for Creative Music, African American Advancement for Creative Music, they had their workshops right where I'm at my mother's house right now, which is in the Jackson Park Highlands. And it was right here on 71st Street, which all the great avant-gardists that are famous in Europe right now all did their work here. And, as we say many times, so my father grew up on 45th and Vincennes, and he grew up next to Lil Hardin, who was, I don't know if you know who Hardin was, but Lil Hardin was the woman that really created the Louis Armstrong, because I know Louis Armstrong is from New Orleans, but he didn't become famous until he came to Chicago and joined the band. I forget the guy's name. I want to say King Creole, maybe, possibly, I don't know.
Right.
That up, but it was Lil Hardin who met him, and she married him, and she was the one that said, hey, you know what, you don't need to be a sideman, you need to be a star. And she cleaned him up, took him to Taylor, and the next thing you know, he's Louis Armstrong.
Wow.
And then he went to Queens, New York, but most of that period was here with Earl Father Hines, and who was here in the Grand Terrace room of the South Side of Chicago. So, as I say, it's hard to talk about the Chicago scene without putting everything in a chronological order. Like in the 1920s. Actually, the radio scene here in Chicago was huge. We were always in the center of the country. And this is a funny thing, as a second city mentality. We were always kind of fighting that, being Cub fans or White Sox fans. We always had to genuflect to the Yankees. And same in the music world. There's Broadway, and then there's Chicago. But before any show goes to Broadway, it makes its run in Chicago. This is where they tinker everything, and then they take it to Broadway. Once it's played its run here, I can tell you, show after show after show tries it here first. And so
it's kind of exciting because then you get like the fresh, raw version of what everybody sees. It's kind of polished. Yeah.
See the changes. The show doesn't come to Broadway ready, because it makes its run somewhere else. And generally that has usually been Chicago, where they do it. And our radio scene here was second to none. As I said, Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony before George Solti. Chicago is just a spectacular place to be. As I say, I would say it's a great place to grow up.
Yeah. Talk about the Jazz Institute a little bit more. Tell people, the Jazz Institute of Chicago, what it does. How did you become involved? How long has it been since you've been involved? And
well, it's celebrating 55 years. Interesting enough, I've been involved with the Institute a lot longer than I've been on the board. So I remember the old days when they used to run the jam sessions in the late 70s, before Andy's. That's a club here that a lot of tourists go there. So in that area, Let me start with this. So I said my family ran newsstands. I'm a family of merchants as well. So we had a bunch of the newsstands in the subway when I was younger, and I used to work in them. And one of those newsstands was on Grand Street, Grand Avenue. I think it's Grand Street. I'm not sure which one it is. But in any case, I worked there as a youth, and so right upstairs was the Jazz Record Mart, which was at 14 West, or may have been 10 First West Grand, right there. That's where the Jazz Record Mart was, and my friend Jim DeJong, who was part of one of the heads of the Jazz Institute, used to work there as well. And in those days, the Reader was by Medina Temple. It was like a kind of a center of art, as it were, for Chicago. I didn't know that. I was just there working in the newsstand, just come upstairs. It was a completely different place now. I mean, in those days, in the 70s, it was the printer area. There was two printing areas, and that was one. So the Chicago Sun-Times and the Tribune building was all over there. And so that was the printing area.
Okay. Now I'm putting it on the map. So that's kind of like by what is now the West Loop a little bit, right?
So, well, just right in the Loop. It wasn't west.
Yeah.
It's in the
Loop. Okay.
It's sort of just west of Streeterville.
Okay.
But all that area is all newly developed in the last 25 years or so. And in fact, if you look at the Blues Brothers, you'll see a different Chicago altogether that exists today. And this is an interesting thing. And speaking of, the Blues Brothers, the reason Belushi placed it here, probably, besides being from here, is because he knew that this was kind of a center of great music, and while they had, as there are others, Memphis, of course, and Nashville, no one can claim total command. Detroit, of course, with Motown and in jazz, but
So I really appreciate all this. It's a strong foundation that Chicago has, and there's all these really interesting nuances that I appreciate you bringing to the fore. I'm recalling. Okay, I'm just curious. Do you know a guy named William Fielder, a trumpet player by any chance?
I don't think.
So he was one of my teachers in university when I went to Rutgers University, a trumpet teacher. But he taught Wynton Marsalis when Wynton Marsalis was younger. But he was coming up around the same time as like Herbie Hancock as well. And, we talked about having some jam sessions and things like that around the area. So I thought maybe you ran into him. But I would love to make a transition because I wanted to get this in there so people could enjoy it, to maybe doing a little bit of playing, and then we can get back to conversation. Are you up for a little
let's see if
musical interlude?
It's been a long day. I'll try this.
Go for it.
I said I was just going to improvise, but then I thought I would play this song here and see if I can do it actually, because my piano teacher, the great Willie Pickens, I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Yeah, for sure.
Last time I interviewed him, and so I said if I could do this, and this is called Lotus Blossom.
Let's hear it. beautiful. Thank you so much. That was really lovely. That was really lovely. Yeah, it came through very nicely. Lotus Blossom, you said.
You know, it was written by Billy Strayhorn. It lets me think about one of my great teachers was, besides Willie Pickens, was the great Orlando Merton, who wasn't known as a piano player, but he was a composer. He wrote, one of his most famous songs was For Once in My Life, that Tony Bennett and Stevie Wonder recorded. He was a harpist and pianist here in town. Taught Ahmad Jamal, taught me. He was one of my teachers, and he and Billy Strayhorn were great friends. He actually, part of his reasons he wasn't more famous, if I may add, is he was flamboyantly gay in the 50s and 60s, and that just was not really commercially viable at that time. So he kind of,
Too bad. It's really too bad. Thanks for sharing. It's fascinating to hear all the kind of tendrils that extend from, your position in the cosmos there and musical cosmos. I would love to talk a little bit about acoustic pianos. I mean, we're piano technicians here. I don't think you said it before we started apologizing. Okay, the piano's a little bit out of tune. I volunteered to come and tune your piano, so just invite me over. We'll take care of it. Don't worry. But you're still making, go ahead.
I was going to say, the piano has been tuned maybe a couple months ago. One of the problems is, we can talk about this piano because this is one of my favorite pianos. I inherited this piano from my uncle, and it is a 1979 Yamaha. It's the G1, which was, this is sort of like having a 1964 Mustang, if you know classic cars. This is a classic, and I really love this instrument. I'm trying to keep it as long as it was bought in 1979. My uncle bought it for himself. He was a police officer, and then he decided he wanted a piano, so he bought this piano, and then he gave it to me upon his death. So this is really one of my favorites. It's a sentimental piano. I love this piano very much. Yeah,
beautiful.
Let's talk.
Yeah, as we always do, like to talk here about the value of the acoustic piano. Here you are, you joined us, you have this acoustic piano, you treasure it, you want to hold on to it as long as possible. It sounds beautiful in its current state. Tune it up, it'll sound great as well. But talk about the role of the acoustic piano in your life as a musician, as a jazz musician. Why does it matter to you? What does it provide for you?
Well, it would be nice if I could play. One of the real problems with pianos is this size is travel, of course. So you can't it's not like a bass. This is what makes the piano different than any other instrument. It's like, well, now actually the bassists have to don't bring their own basses anymore, and then airlines are making it increasingly hard for even cellists to travel, without an extra ticket and all. So the downside of playing piano is that you have to play other pianos all the time. You're not the piano, and each one is different, as you know. Each one has its own personality. I don't want to get too geeky, but it's really. As you talk about pianos, I could talk for days because I was talking to someone about there's most people don't realize that they think tuning the piano, that if they're in their thoughts it's just one string, like tuning a guitar. They have no idea the intricacy of this instrument. To me it's incredible. That it just to start with the hammers going up, just even that, the levers of pushing this down, and that you can shade it, you can do all these different things with a working piano when it's really designed well. So starting with how you even touch the piano. So there's the old curve style that was from the olden days, where you would curve your fingers like this. That was one thought. I myself of a flat hand player. So I play very flat handed, and this is So, and then also my teacher at Oberlin, he was very, very good for me. His name was Miles Monty. And he was, and in fact, when I got him, I thought, oh, he's not the cool teacher to have. How I don't know if you know about this conservatory. There's a lot of teachers you can have, and then there's the really cool one that all the cool kids have, and he wasn't one of the cool ones. But he was such a great, it turned out, he was the best teacher for me. He was a great friend, and he really taught me a lot about touch, and how to play the piano by squeezing the keys. We squeeze the keys instead of, everyone thinks we touch the keys, there's that. But most of us are squeezing the keys to get the sound that we want, and that's when you can. So as if you play pool, so that's how you put English on the cue ball. You can't, you don't want to just hit the cue ball. There's English. There's all these shadings, and so and then there's the soundboard itself, the strings, the way that what you guys do, you tune the pens. This is incredible. Then there's the pedals. How about the pedals? The damper pedal. Where you just lifts up the thing. What do you call the dampers?
The dampers, right? Yeah.
This one that just kind of lifts it all up. Or then there's the sostenuto pedal, which will hold this one, but not hold these dampers. How do they do that? I don't know. Then there's the mechanism of the, what do you call it?
The shift pedal, yeah.
The shift pedal, and it just shifts the hammer this way, on the grand piano that's like this. Of course, in spinets, it doesn't do that all the time. They have some other thing that they use, which is kind of like a piece of felt for the uprights, but nevertheless,
any pianos you particularly enjoy playing in the Chicago area, like in some of the locations and stuff,
like that.
Yeah,
most of them have been pretty good. I've been very, very fortunate. I've played it. The Green Mills piano has always been great. The Jazz Showcase has a great piano. I play at pianoforte quite a bit. Of course, they have Fazioli. I'm not a big fan of Fazioli, but I like them. They can't be questioned. I think that they're, but I'm not a big fan of Boisendorfer either, because I think they just that doesn't suit my personality. It's not that the piano's bad. It doesn't suit my personality is more inward, and theirs is like very, very bright. And I like dark sounding pianos because it's more. It seems to me I can control it better. If it's really, really bright. You know what I mean? I feel a bit like, oh boy, how am I going to control it? Sort of like, so that's what Fazioli and Boisendorfers, or even say Steinway big gigantic grands, they're hard to, for me, depending on the circumstances. Now, if I'm playing with it and say it's with an orchestra, then of course the 9-foot grand Steinway is where you want to go. But if you're playing for a singer or cellist, now I got it's got this big gigantic motor when I just want to go, I want to go like it's an electric motor, So those are the interesting things for me as a pianist, playing piano, and the differences between
Beautiful.
them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, kind of your lifestyle, your professional lifestyle, basically, right? So you've mentioned it a few times to me even before we started. It's kind of like, you're just kind of like, consider yourself like kind of a bread and butter musician, just gigging and, just kind of doing what you do to be a musician on a day-to-day basis. I would love to just hear about that. You may not find it that fascinating, but, what is it like to kind of pull together a musical career in Chicago, in your position? What are you up to? I know you do some musicals with high schools, and you do some teaching and gigging. What are you up to?
Well, it is a thing. You do. You find out now it's a lot different today than when I left college in the early '80s. The scene was a lot more vibrant. And it was a lot more affordable, even because I moved to New York in 1980, and even then, I mean, my apartment was on 54th and 9th. It was $400 a month. It was a studio. It may have had a lot of critters and things like this, but it was really cool. And I had some gigs that maybe paid $50 here.
So 54th and 9th. I'm trying to think of that from Carnegie Hall. Is that not far?
Very close. In fact,
wow, that's cool.
And it was very close to Broadway. So Carnegie is 57th and 8th, around in there, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm looking on the map here. It was just like a 5-minute walk or something, huh?
Yes, Steinway was across the street. This was over a store, and in those days, it was the Upper West. Was Hell's Kitchen, the area that I was living in, and as I say, it was very, very affordable. I mean, all things considered, $400 a month, which is probably, I don't know what the equivalent is today. It might be, I don't know, $1,000, $1,200, but that place now I'm sure is going for $3,000 or $4,000 today. So
yeah.
And we don't have the gigs to do it. So when I first got out, it was a lot easier. I dare say there were more restaurants, there were places to play. It certainly was a different time. I say, one of my first gigs is, I started working with musicals and things like this early on, which led me to singers. And some of the early gigs I had was just playing lounges, where we would just come in and I always laugh. I say, in those days, we had people who just hung out at places where people sang and people did things, and they just kind of hung out. That doesn't really exist today, I don't think, as much as it. I mean, I think that we have people who come out, but they're people who are like really, truly music fans. These were just regular guys who would stop in bars and it's funny that we were like psychologists to them almost, because they came in, they wanted to hear, here's that rainy day. The joke is play Melancholy Baby for me, which is from the Roaring 20s with James Cagney, He said, so it's a funny thing, and people would come in and they'd sit there and they'd have drinks and ask us to play things for them, and so the infrastructure was different. So I was able to, and then we made tips and things like this. So that's how I first started out playing in. When I didn't have shows. And then certainly I started out in the church like most musicians, we played church on Sunday or Saturday, as it were, for Seventh-day Adventists, or, and so, so first I started playing, clubs like this, and then I got a job. It was interesting. I was doing the piano bar thing there for a while because it paid more money. Because at the end of the day, you can say I'm a musician, but until you're able to pay your bills as a musician, well, you're not, so certainly you can get an education job. I myself didn't really take a teaching position. It was nothing. I wasn't against teaching or anything like that. I just felt that I was traveling too much to take a teaching position like that. So which was I was getting to, which is I started playing. This is my early 20s. I started playing for singers and different type of combos, and we would go around the city, and then then I started doing tours, and I took in 84, 85. I took a 6-month gig in Osaka, Japan, working with this singer from Milwaukee, Penny Goodwin, who was kind of like in Milwaukee. She is the grand dame of Milwaukee. All the great piano players, David Hazeltine, Joe Cannon, Carl Allen from New York. They all worked with all these Milwaukee musicians, came under her tutelage. Anyway, she took me to Japan with her, and I stayed there for 4 or 5 months, working in this kind of Yakuza club that was just, that's kind of gangster type thing. And it was great. We did it was so funny. We did 20-minute sets. We would do 20 minutes from 6 to 6:20 and take 40 minutes break. And do 7 to 7:20 and then take a 40-minute break.
That's nice.
The opposite of 40-20. 40-20 is the other way. We were doing 20-40s. And why they did this, I'll never know. It's not, but I stayed there for the longest, and I came back, and, then I got this gig. So I wasn't really playing jazz per se. We were playing jazz for Penny, but I was doing cabaret out. So I should tell you this. I'm known for being an accompanist more than anything. I accompany singers. I did this in high school. I did it in grade school. And when I got to Oberlin, I became the accompanist for various people. This is a completely different piano genre, as it were.
It's a very specialized skill. I mean, I've done a little bit of accompaniment, and I have to say, I don't know that I'm the greatest accompanist, like you got to follow, you got to be sensitive to what somebody's doing. You got to be able to we got to change the key. Oh, okay. Or if you know they can't find the note or they don't know their entrance, you got to give them a little indication. It's a very specialized skill.
It's a big responsibility, yes.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started, working with singers, because it was easy for me to stay in the background and not have to deal with the stage fright that and then I started singing myself, because they didn't have enough money because at the end of the day, you still gotta. So my mom, she's always been kind of like I say she didn't really, she gave me piano lessons, I think, to be cultured, but she understood because she was the daughter of a musician and a sibling of a musician. She understood the difficulty of sustaining a music career, and so she always kind of encouraged me to when I went to Oberlin to study other things so that in case this music thing doesn't work out, sort of type of thing. And that partly was a big thing for me too, big fear, because my grandfather was known as this great virtuoso musician, and so as was my aunt, and so I came under them, so it was easy to play for other people, and that way I didn't have to kind of shine myself. So I like to say that's what I was doing, working with singers and doing cabaret and doing also, because I love the cabaret, because I say cabaret is a place where you can just do whatever. So one of the things about jazz is the whole definition of what is jazz and what is jazz. And so sometimes you get caught up in that and all this, and they make these big discussions in the conservatory. And to me, I think every great musician, whether it's Duke Ellington, Herbie Hancock, everyone tells you the same thing. There's only music. And there is all these different classifications really have no bearing, because, it's really just us playing. This is an inanimate object, so to speak. And then we come here and we do things with it,
Right.
And we try to play with people's emotions, as it were.
The best explanation I've heard of it is that the musical categories are really more for the listener than the player, and it's really just because it's a tool for them to find things that they like. Oh, I liked that. Maybe I'll like this. They're kind of in the same category of jazz, right? But most musicians they wouldn't know how to categorize their own music. They just want to play something and. Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's classical elements in jazz as there are jazz elements in classical. I mean, so we know Debussy wrote a great ragtime piece. Ravel wrote some jazzy pieces. They were very influenced. Schoenberg was influenced, as was Stravinsky by jazz. And we're certainly influenced by them as well. And so. I was getting at, I got this gig. So I wasn't known as a jazz musician. I'll try to make this quick. So a guy says to me, one of my buddies, he's a piano duo specialist. I worked for 4 years there in the 80s, in between traveling at this place called Yvette's, and it was a 2-piano place. In those days, 2-piano was really in its infancy. We used to say that there was this
New York or Chicago?
Huh?
This was in New York or Chicago?
In Chicago.
Okay.
Right in the Rush Street area. And so they had 2 pianos, grand pianos facing each other. And so I worked there for like 4 years.
Now, was this like dueling pianos? Is that the whole idea?
Yes, but that's what's known as now, dueling pianos.
Okay.
Oddly enough, I told you about my piano teacher was part of a twin set. And his twin passed away, and that's when he started teaching at Oberlin. And we had a set of twins that was in my freshman year. So I've been doing a lot of 2 pianos in my lifetime. A lot of it. 1 piano, 4 hands, 2 pianos. And so this place was one of my experiences there. So anyway, I was getting kind of tired of it. It was the 80s. I was like, oh my God, do I want to end up as what you described, dueling pianos? So one of my friends, who is actually one of the big dueling pianos still today, he said to me, there's this audition that they're hiring people to go to Norway. This is 1987 or so. And both of us were thinking, we're both single young men, like, Norway sounds good to me. Let's go to Scandinavia. So we go do the audition. He gets the gig because it's like a rock and roll cabaret. He gets the gig. I didn't get the gig. But the agent says, but I have something I think you would be good with. There's this guy, they're looking for this jazz piano player, a guy from Chicago, and they're going to Norway too, to Bergen, Norway. And that guy turned out to be L.D. Young. And L.D. Young and Red Holt, who were part of the original Ramsey Lewis trio. And they were known as Young Holt Unlimited too. So it was there. I got the gig with L.D. Young in Bergen, Norway. We go there. We play 4 months. We do fabulous. I'm playing this jazz. The first time I'm really, really playing mostly jazz in my life, And then he says, hey, do you want to come to Singapore with us? And I said, nah, I don't think so. I think I want to go back I was missing home. And then I come back home and I said, you're crazy. Go call him up and say, do this. So I called back. Is the gig still there? He says, yes, man. I was waiting for you to get your head together and say, yeah. I knew you were going to come around. I didn't hire anybody. So I said, okay, I'm going. And I went with him and I stayed with him for 4 years. L.D. Young and Red Holt, and that was like, I will say that was my graduate school, like my master's degree and my PhD in music was working with these two fine gentlemen. We lost Red Holt last year at the age of 90 years old, 91, 92. And L.D. they took me on as their child actually, and really showed me the ropes. It was a fantastic experience. I would stay with him for 4 years. I went to Singapore, I went to Hong Kong. We stayed in Singapore 6 months, and we played at this great club called the Somerset Club. It was a great time to be in Asia because it was the global travel had just kind of opened up, which is like the end of the 80s. I'll tell you how things change. In the early days, in order to get to Tokyo, for example, you would fly from Chicago to LA, and then LA to Anchorage, and then Anchorage over. You couldn't fly from LA to Japan in those days. You had to gas up in Anchorage.
Yeah. Yep.
Then, of course, nonstop flights came, and you could fly from LA to Tokyo, for God's sakes, which was like incredible. Now you fly from Chicago to Tokyo, but that did not happen in those days, just like a puddle bunch, And so we were there for a long time, and that was where I really established myself as a jazz artist, as it were.
Beautiful. So, what wonderful opportunities. By the way, we have reached as high as #1 performing arts podcast in Norway. So maybe I'll catch a little bit of your Norwegian history there. And we've also
great Norway. They dropped me off in Bergen, which was the home of Grieg. So that's what we know of Norwegian music and classical. Of course, the great music of Grieg. And I studied all his piano pieces too. And then I got to play Grieg's piano. Turned out his descendant, maybe way down, young kid there. He was maybe 16 years old, 17 years old. He played bass. This is in 1988, so I don't know how old he is now, if he's still there. And I got a chance to play with him, and then we went to the Grieg house and everything, and it was just wonderful. I went back to Norway since many times, and I just love it there. I think it's just walking through the mountains in the side was just I still in awe of that great country and the fjords and how beautiful it is.
Well, I've got to visit now. You're making me give me some wanderlust for Norway. The podcast has also done pretty well in Singapore, so that's fascinating. We've gotten to number 34 in performing arts in Singapore. So maybe some of your old friends will. I know that guy.
Singapore has a great jazz scene. The guy who's the head of that, his name is Jeremy Montero, of course, the great jazz pianist, and he and I are the same age. So when I got to Singapore, I was, 26, 27 years old, I don't know, around in that age. And he's just maybe 6 months older. He had the group there, and he had been working with LD and Red as well. So he's like my brother that way too. So he was young, and we were all young, and Singapore was really expanding, and it was just a great time to be there. And I have many friends there. I haven't been in 15 years or so, but I still in touch with them.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that, can be lost on someone looking in from the outside. And also some people neglect to explore is the opportunities that music can bring us. That I'm a musician, and I played on cruise ships at one point. That was kind of a beautiful experience to kind of meet because you'd had all these different people from different countries working on the ships, and meeting people who were coming onto the ships, and just to travel. And piano tuning also, I think some people underexplore the opportunities that can bring just the different people that you meet, and you strike up a conversation, and something wonderful happens. It sounds like you've really had some wonderful life experiences due to your involvement with music. I'm curious if you might be up for playing one more thing before we start to roll out. Are you into it? You can say no. It's up to you.
Let me see if I can do something here. Yeah, let me try something here. Okay.
All right, go for it. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Wonderful. Some Thelonious Monk.
Thelonious Monk, it is. Yeah.
Is that
It is.
with Nelly? Oh,
it
wow.
was.
Wonderful. Oh, man. Great playing. Wonderful playing. You really got the...
Yeah, I should have practiced it first. But
No, that was great. You've really got the authenticity of American music in your veins. Beautiful. All right. Well, we should probably start to roll out. I know you're not much of a, self-promoter. You're a local guy. You're kind of on the scene. But is there any place you'd like to send people? Website, social media, come see this show, look this up, whatever, just some advice?
Yes. So I am starting a new project. So be on the lookout. Let's see, I'm going to be playing with some young cats. I'm really excited about this because I've been saying to myself, I do need to record some of my own music.
Indeed.
So as I said, one of the things you do as a musician, as a professional musician, is you work on everybody else's projects, and it's been wonderful. I get to work. I've been working with, for example, Kahil El-Zabar, who is a great avant-garde percussionist and one of the great stalwarts of the Chicago scenes, and it's been wonderful. But and it's been great. But I need to work on my own. So I work with Ari Brown a lot, and so I was thinking, I really do need to work on some of my own stuff. So I am actually going to be doing some things at the Logan Center, which is at the University of Chicago, and it's their third piano, the third Tuesday series. I don't know if it's available live, but it's going to be June 18th. We're quite excited about that. I'm doing the Blues Festival next week. I'm doing a tribute to Dinah Washington. We're doing a bunch of tributes to Dinah Washington this month because it's the centennial of her birth. She grew up here in Chicago, Dinah Washington, and so it was for her centennial, there's going to be quite a bit of tributes to her this year. And I'm doing two this year. One at the Chicago Blues Fest next Saturday, June 8th, I think 7th or whatever, with the great jazz singer Dee Alexander, who is one of my great clients. I've been working with her for 20 plus years. I've been her music director for 20 plus years.
Wow.
And then the other one is going to be at this club called Winter's Jazz Club, which is in downtown Chicago. It's a very nice place. It's new in the last 5 years or so, 6 years. And I'm going to do that one with a singer here in Chicago. Her name is Bobby Wilson. And so, yeah.
Oh, let's see. We just got a little note here in the chat. That's why you're pausing here. It's from one of our viewers, and it's... Let's see what he said here. This is Johan Krebs. He says, I'm not a jazz player, but I love Miguel's interpretations. Thank you for giving some insight into the world of jazz.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate that, Johan. Thanks for participating. Okay, yeah, and you were mentioning the Blues Fest and Dinah Washington. And
I'll be at the Chicago Jazz Fest, too, as well, with this young trio that I'm doing, the piano trio, which is going to play some of my arrangements that I've been doing over the years.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for asking me. I mean, it's interesting. As I said, I was surprised that you called me because, as I say, I'm just your bread and butter piano player. I appreciate you calling me.
Well, I was telling you, too, that one of the reasons we found you is because ChatGPT thinks you're, Chicago jazz pianist. I mean, you're a Chicago. You're right there. And it makes sense to me, I guess.
It's interesting. As I say, I wrote that for Orion. I do a lot of chamber music.
Okay, yeah.
A left-hand piano suite that's sort of classical in its way, and so yes, and I played on WFMT.
Wonderful.
These classical singers there, and so thank you, ChatGPT. Okay,
you're very talented, and I'm trying to do that's one thing I'm trying to do intentionally here because I haven't taken advantage of it. Just being in Chicago, connecting with the some of the local talent here, and just what's going on here, and sharing that as part of the show. So you're part of our initiatives there, and appreciate that. And just give me a call. We'll get your piano tuned. I know you got somebody else that tunes it, but I'm happy to participate and, not stepping on anybody's toes, but I'm here to help whatever you need. All right. I'll do our sign off script here and then we'll end the call, and I'll give you a quick call when we're done so that we can wrap up just one-on-one. But I will say, we have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Miguel de la Cerna for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us just today for this session, individually make your life more convenient. Subscribe to PTRH, just $16 a month. Get recording of today's session in a member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh. Don't forget our upcoming convention on June 20th. The short link for that is bit.ly/PTMC24. Check out our Substack. Check out the Piano Tech Radio Hour podcast. Get on our socials. We're getting really active out there and trying to spread the word about all this good stuff, including Miguel's music and performances that we now have as part of the program. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.